destroy my car!
Imagine being pulled over on your own street, not by law enforcement, not by a patrol unit, but by a man in a golf cart, flashing orange lights, cheap sunglasses, and a plastic badge he'd probably ordered online. That's exactly what happened to Darius Cole, a black man who moved into Maple Ridge Estates to care for his mother, hoping for peace. But behind the perfect lawns and painted fences lurked Gregory Harlan, a power-hungry HOA president, and his lackey Paul Minter, using fake fines and fear to control the neighborhood. Darius Cole was about to discover just how deep that corruption ran, and when he did, Maple Ridge Estates would never be the same again. The flashing red and blue lights in the rearview mirror weren't just confusing, they were insulting. Officer Darius Cole, a proud black California Highway Patrol veteran, narrowed his eyes at the ridiculous sight behind him. A golf cart wobbling down the road, orange lights spinning, trying to look official. The man behind the wheel was Paul Minter, the pudgy self-proclaimed HOA enforcer from Maple Ridge Estates, grinning like he'd just caught a fugitive. Darius could hardly believe what he was seeing. This wasn't a cop, it was a wannabe authority figure in a wrinkled uniform shirt and cheap sunglasses. The oversized plastic badge on Paul's chest shimmered in the afternoon light as if mocking every real officer who'd ever earned one the hard way. With a weary sigh, Darius eased his patrol car to the side of the quiet suburban road. His hand instinctively hovered over his badge, a reflex born from years of tense highway encounters. But this was new territory. A golf cart pulling over a state officer in his own neighborhood. Paul strutted up to Darius's window, clipboard clutched like a weapon. "Sir," Paul barked, his voice dripping with misplaced authority, "do you know why I pulled you over?" Darius stared at him for several seconds, torn between laughter and disbelief. "Yeah," Darius said dryly, "I don't." Paul puffed up his chest. "This is Maple Ridge Estates. HOA policy forbids commercial vehicles from being parked or driven within community limits. And this," he gestured dramatically at Darius's marked CHP Cruiser, "is a commercial vehicle." Darius let out a short, incredulous laugh. "This is a patrol car," Darius replied evenly. "I'm a cop, Paul. You're a homeowner with a clipboard." But Paul didn't blink. "You're under HOA jurisdiction the moment you cross those gates." Darius's patience thinned. "You're joking." "I never joke about HOA policy," Paul declared, his face twisting into mock seriousness. "If this vehicle isn't gone by tomorrow morning, we'll start fining you." He scrawled something on his clipboard and slapped a paper on Darius's windshield like it was a federal warrant. Darius glanced at it. A $75 fine for violating HOA vehicle policy. Have you ever had someone with zero real authority try to boss you around like they owned the law? What would you do if a wannabe security guard tried pulling you over, then fined you for driving your own patrol car? Before we go further, what city or country are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments. We love seeing where our viewers are tuning in from. And if you believe real authority isn't bought with a clipboard, smash that like button and subscribe to Story Arc. He exhaled slowly, jaw tight. Maple Ridge Estates had seemed peaceful when Darius moved there to care for his mother. But now, he was beginning to see what lay underneath. The next morning, Darius Cole stepped outside, coffee mug in hand, and stopped cold. Another notice was wedged under his patrol car's wiper. His name was written in bold, underlined ink, like a personal challenge. The charge this time? Unsightly tires due to visible dirt splatter. Darius clenched his jaw, the absurdity almost comical. He'd washed the cruiser 2 days ago. But what really fueled his anger wasn't the paper, it was the sight down the street. There stood Paul, clipboard in hand, chatting smugly with Gregory Harlan, the HOA president himself. Gregory was wiry and balding, with a perpetual smirk that screamed control. He walked like the street belonged to him. Darius had seen men like Gregory before, arrogant, manipulative, and convinced they were untouchable. Enough was enough. Darius set his coffee down, straightened his uniform, and marched down the street. His badge glinted in the sunlight, an unspoken reminder that he wasn't someone to be toyed with. "Don't even think about putting another ticket on my car," Darius warned, voice steady but firm. Gregory turned, still smiling that fake neighborly smile. "Officer Cole," Gregory said smoothly, "I understand your position. But Maple Ridge Estates operates under a strict set of guidelines. If you can't follow them, there will be consequences. Darius's stare hardened. Are you threatening me now? Not a threat, Gregory replied, his tone dripping with condescension. Just a reminder. If you keep pushing, we may have to enforce the rules more aggressively. Darius's fists tightened at his sides. Every instinct told him to put an end to the smug performance right there, but years in uniform had trained him better. The last thing he needed was to give these men what they wanted, an excuse. For a while, Darius tried to ignore the HOA's nonsense, but Paul's harassment only escalated. Violation slips arrived almost daily now. Fines for leaving his trash bins out 2 minutes too long, for parking too close to the curb, even for having his garden hose visible from the street. Then came the breaking point, a certified letter. When Darius opened it, his blood ran cold. The HOA warned that repeated violations could result in a lien against his property. His home. The house he'd bought to take care of his aging mother. This wasn't random harassment anymore. This was a move, targeted, deliberate, and far too organized to be just petty HOA business. That night, Darius Cole sat at his kitchen table, the certified letter spread open before him like a threat. He'd dealt with criminals, con men, and corrupt officials before, but never like this. Something about Gregory Harlan's operation didn't feel like simple power tripping. It felt calculated. Darius started paying closer attention. Over the next few weeks, he noticed a disturbing pattern. Every single elderly homeowner on the block had been fined repeatedly. Each violation piled up until the residents, exhausted and financially drained, were forced to sell their homes for next to nothing. And the buyers? Always the same private investors. People Darius later discovered were all close associates of Gregory. The realization hit hard. Maple Ridge Estates wasn't being managed. It was being stripped. Darius began digging. He pored through public property records, HOA filings, and company registrations late into the night. The deeper he looked, the uglier it got. Gregory's so-called investors were part of a shell company flipping homes under the table for massive profits. HOA funds were vanishing from the books, and anyone who dared question it ended up drowning in violations until they gave up. Then came the final insult. One night, Darius came home from a late shift, only to find his patrol car missing. He called the local impound lot, expecting some mistake. But no, it had been towed by request of the HOA. That was it. The next morning, Darius stormed into the HOA office, his CHP badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Gregory Harlan sat behind his pristine desk, sipping coffee like a man who thought he owned the world. You had my patrol car towed, Darius snapped. That's right, Gregory replied smoothly. Commercial vehicle, against policy. Darius stepped forward, his tone low but dangerous. You've crossed a line, Gregory. I know what you're doing. The shell company, the missing HOA funds. You think nobody's noticed? Gregory's smile faded. His eyes hardened into something colder. Be careful, Cole, Gregory said quietly. A man can find himself in a lot of trouble if he doesn't know when to back off. Darius froze, the weight of that warning sinking deep. Gregory wasn't bluffing anymore. This wasn't HOA politics. It was organized corruption. The next morning, Darius Cole stepped onto his porch and stopped dead. Nailed to his front door was a dead rat, its lifeless body hanging beside a note scrawled in red ink, "Don't push it." Darius stared for a long moment, the message sinking in. This wasn't about fines anymore. This was intimidation, a warning meant to scare him into silence. But fear wasn't in Darius's nature. Not when his mother's home, his neighbors, and his community were being threatened. He took photos of everything, the rat, the note, even the nail marks in the wood. Years of training as a highway patrol officer had taught him one golden rule. Always document everything. He filed the photos, kept copies of every violation notice, every threat, every suspicious encounter with Gregory Harlan and Paul. Later that afternoon, Darius parked his newly retrieved patrol car squarely in his driveway, front and center, in plain sight. He angled it perfectly, just enough to make Gregory and Paul twitch. Sure enough, 20 minutes later, Paul waddled up the street, clipboard in hand, his expression smug as ever. Before Paul could slap another notice onto the windshield, Darius stepped out of his house, arms folded. Don't bother, Darius said calmly. I'm not moving it. Paul smirked. Then expect another fine. You know what, Paul? Darius said, voice even. Tell your boss that if he wants my car gone, he can come talk to me himself. Paul's grin faltered for the first time, but he scribbled something on his clipboard anyway and waddled off. Once Paul disappeared, Darius crossed the street to Ruth Evans's house. Ruth was in her 60s, a sharp, retired cybersecurity consultant who had never gotten along with the HOA. She greeted Darius with a knowing look and handed him a mug of coffee before he even spoke. Darius laid out everything: the fines, the intimidation, the shell company flipping homes, and now the dead rat. Ruth listened silently, her sharp eyes narrowing as the picture formed. "You're right," she said finally. "Gregory's running something big. I've suspected for a while." Darius wasn't surprised. Ruth had been collecting her own evidence too: financial records, property transfers, and even photographs of Gregory meeting with men who didn't belong anywhere near Maple Ridge Estates. But none of it was enough. Not yet. "We need proof," Darius said. "Something undeniable." Over the next week, Darius, Cole, and Ruth set up a quiet web of hidden cameras across Maple Ridge Estates, in porch lights, bird feeders, and lawn ornaments. Ruth's tech skills made them invisible. For days, the footage showed only Paul strutting around like a wannabe cop, scribbling fake violations. Nothing tied Gregory Harlan directly to the corruption until one night. Returning from a late shift, Darius spotted two figures sneaking around the Wilkersons' house, the elderly couple constantly targeted by the HOA. He cut his lights and approached quietly, instincts sharp. Under the moonlight, he saw them clearly: Gregory and Paul. Paul kept watch while Gregory crouched at the door, slipped a manila envelope inside, and vanished into the dark. Darius retrieved the envelope after they left. Inside were legal documents threatening foreclosure, followed by a lowball offer from one of Gregory's shell companies. The scheme was obvious: scare the residents, threaten foreclosure, then buy their homes cheap. The next morning, the Wilkersons confirmed everything: stacks of intimidating letters, each one worse than the last. They'd tried to pay, but the fines never stopped. The HOA wasn't enforcing order anymore. It was running an extortion racket. Darius needed something airtight. With Ruth's help, he set a trap. Two undercover officers, posing as wealthy investors, arranged a meeting with Gregory under the pretense of buying distressed homes. Darius sat at a nearby booth in the diner, pretending to read a newspaper while his recorder ran quietly. Gregory couldn't help himself. Pride was always his weakness. Between sips of coffee, he bragged about his methods. "You'd be surprised what a few well-timed fines can do," Gregory said with a smirk. "Pressure people long enough, they'll sell for pennies. I run the HOA. I decide what's a violation." Darius's jaw tightened. That was it. Proof, recorded in Gregory's own voice. But then a black SUV rolled up outside the diner. Darius recognized one of the men from Ruth's footage, a bigger fish. The man slipped Gregory an envelope before leaving. Darius didn't need to open it to know what was inside. Dirty money. Gregory wasn't just scamming homeowners, he was laundering for organized criminals. That night, Darius turned the evidence over to his captain. By dawn, a raid warrant was signed. When Gregory arrived at the HOA office for another payoff meeting, unmarked cars surrounded the parking lot. Officers moved in fast, weapons drawn. Gregory's confident mask shattered as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. Inside his SUV were stacks of cash, fake violation notices, offshore account records, everything. "It's over," Darius said, staring him down. The evidence buried Gregory. The residents took back their community. Fines were erased, homes were returned, and a kind retired teacher named Linda Hartman was elected HOA president to restore sanity. If you believe no man should ever use fear to feel powerful, hit that like button and subscribe to Story Arc, because some men only learn respect when the cuffs click shut.